This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 24th of January 2023 at home in Wicklow. And in the first half of this episode, I talk about Manifest, the theatre production that I am currently involved in, which is all about masculinity and which is another iteration of the community arts project What Does He Need, which I was involved in last year as a facilitator. So I talk about that, and I also talk in the first half of the episode about why Cat Stevens makes me laugh. Nothing personal, but you'll listen and find out there's a funny bit of connectivity there. And in the second half of the episode, I talk about a couple of recent, very recent in one case, a couple of troubling incidents that have made the Irish airwaves over the last little while. And I put them into a context of collective forgetting and why we shouldn't really do that, because it leads to very problematic incidents, and fundamentally I'm talking about the need to do better as a society. And those incidents they relate to sort of hot points of racism and sectarianism and violence and hate language. So you can have a listen and you can see what you think, and I hope you enjoy. So I'll see you there, right around the corner. Cheers.
Not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind. Keep my emoji.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. How are you today? How's it going? You know, with my with the headphones I use, and the microphone that I use, it picks up the bird song outside #blessed where I'm recording, and I don't think you pick it up by the time this goes out. I'm not sure that bird song is audible to you, the listener, but it's very much audible to me as I record, and it's rather lovely. So isn't that nice for me, the bird song? Unless, of course, it's just in my head, and then it's a little bit worrying. But what you gonna do? We all have to find a way of coming to accommodations with what's in our head. Anyway, here we are, another week has rolled by. There's been a horrible sequence of 3 or 4 days of mucky, grey, scuzzy, nondescript weather. Although I did just describe it as mucky, grey, and scuzzy. So that's maybe, that doesn't quite make sense. There's a little paradox there. Just, mucky, low grey sky. It's not very inspiring. But last Friday was absolutely beautiful. Just gorgeous. It's such a good day last Friday. Let me tell you about my great day. So basically, there's a backdrop to the great day. I've started rehearsing a theatre production called Manifest, which is the creation of Broken Talkers Theatre Company. This is a further iteration of a community arts project. Makes it sound too small. So a community arts venture, a community arts mission that I was involved in last year. It's called What Does He Need? And that was a co-creation of Rialto Youth Project, the artist Fiona Whelan, and Broken Talkers Theatre Company. And the the overarching goal of the what does he need project, I'll use project for want of a better word, is to explore masculinity in Ireland today, and particularly to explore it as it is perceived and lived by young men. And we're talking guys in their teens primarily, sometimes younger, but the group I was involved in, they were teenagers. I did some work with them last year, a really interesting kind of first phase of a project with a great youth group up in Ballymun, some brilliant youth workers. That's a shout out to Ken and Kev at Briar, the Ballymun youth. Oh, was it Ballymun Briar, Bryr, Ballymun Resource. No, not sure. Sorry, lads, I've forgotten what it stands for. Anyway, you know who you are. It's a great group up there doing great work with young people in Ballymun. In any case, Manifest is just another, as I said, iteration of this work, and this started about 4 years ago, and it's been worked through with different youth groups around Dublin, and there have been different artistic outcomes at different stages with different groups and different facilitators, and now the lads at Broken Talkers, Gary and Phelan, I've decided it's time to put a theatrical iteration of the work, of the process, up on its legs in it'll be performed towards the end of February into early March in the Project Theatre in Dublin, I think in their small space in the Cube. So yeah, I'm one of the members of the cast, and we started rehearsals about a week and a half ago, and it's devised work. So there's a sort of a working template, but each session we're bringing in new things and responding to things that come up in the process, and bringing a lot of ourselves and our own kind of personal experience and our own personal thoughts and relationship to masculinity into the mix. And it's been brilliant so far. It's been really, really good. And there's a really great bunch of people involved, some really brilliant and kind of beautiful men involved in this project, which is it's very inspiring and very stimulating, very motivating, very moving, and quite exhausting actually as well when you're engaging with things that are so deeply personal, things that live very close to your soul, as that's how I perceive it, and live very close to your identity and the things that have been so central to the shape you make in the world. Anyway, that is ongoing, and I will fill you in more, and I'll give you further clarification of those dates and when the show is going to be on. But do keep an eye on social media. Everyone will be putting a bit of stuff out there. I think it's going to be a really interesting, engaging, stimulating show with a lot of different elements to it. And nobody at any point is making any claims that this is some definitive account of masculinity or the final word on masculinity as has been experienced in Ireland. But it's a work in progress, and that's part of the dynamic. It's something that is fluid, it's something that evolves, it's something that has contradictions and is open to challenges. But I think the sort of underpinning driver of the work is a real determination to engage with what masculinity is and can be, and a determination to engage with that honestly and bravely. So that's what's happening. Anyway, so having started that process and having been really fired up by it, by the end of last week, I was just feeling great. And Friday was a beautiful day, and it was also the day I got to get my car back. My car was being worked on at great expense, much to my disappointment, much to my dismay. My car required some body work to pass its NCT. That's the Irish kind of roadworthiness test. It passed on everything else, but it needed some rust repair. Anyway, it turned out to be a massive job, and my car was taken away from me last week for the week, and I was able to pick it up on Friday morning. It was a beautiful, beautiful sunny morning, gorgeous winter's morning. One of my favourite times of the year, when you get those conditions, one of my favourite times of the year. Low sun in the sky with lots of blue sky, lovely white fluffy clouds, a crispness and a brightness to the day. And my brother dropped me down to get my car, and then I went for a swim. And there was a bit of compared to the water, there was a nice little bit of heat from the sun. The sun was most definitely a warming element, and it was great to be in the water. It was just lovely to be in the water. It was bloody cold, of course, and this is the thing that I think is interesting. Because my head was in such a good space, and really I felt like I was just in a sort of a flow state, and I just had a lot of positive ideas and impulses and sort of little inspired trains of thought bopping around my head, and had that going on all morning. I'd been out walking Pepper the dog in the woods beside us here, and I just had great sort of flow of kind of thought and different ideas for different things. So it was just all happening, and getting into the water in that kind of headspace, being very, very positive. It's amazing how much more bearable cold temperatures are when you're feeling like that. And they've done experiments on this. When you're in a very positive frame of mind, extreme temperatures are more tolerable. Not, here, let me pour some boiling water on you. Didn't feel a thing. But a gradual and steady increase in temperature while while your hand is submerged in water. If you're thinking positive thoughts and expressing positive thoughts, that heat won't feel as painful or uncomfortable to you as the opposite if you're expressing negative thoughts. And so, yeah, that's very evident to me. Getting into cold water. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful swim, beautiful sun in the sky, and then I drove from there up to Dublin for Friday's rehearsal session, and it was a great session, some great kind of movement work we did. And it's amazing how getting into the body can also be confronting territory. It doesn't have to be, of course, and I mean, two of the members of the cast are dancers. So far less confronting for them. I use my body a lot, but even still, to be tested, to be put into a space and to be sort of pushed and asked to stretch yourself, and I don't mean that in a literal sense, because they're using the body in a process, in a creative, dynamic, in an exploratory way that can raise things. It can stimulate things, and while you're doing that, of course, while being observed very closely. Now, it's a safe space, of course. That's what you want. That's what I think you want creative spaces to be. And when you feel safe, you're more comfortable being challenged, because there's kind of security there and there's trust. And I believe in that dynamic as something that allows good things to happen, as opposed to the idea of very attritional, confrontational, destabilizing creative spaces. And I know there's a school of thought out there that supports that idea. I don't. I can't stand that thing. I think it's just power tripping and manipulation and bullying and all sorts of crap that I really don't value in that space. Yeah, you know, directors or whoever who try to manipulate performers. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's ways to get places, aren't there? Aren't there different ways to get the results you want? Anyway, Friday, great day. It was a great day. Really, really, really nice. And here, there's two. I'm going to try. Okay, I'm going to circle back. I'm going to circle back to swimming after this next little share. But the funny thing, I was driving up to Dublin after my swim, back in my own car, which I really enjoyed. And now, funnily enough, my brother had given me the lend of a mini convertible that he had bought on impulse the previous weekend. Did I refer to this? I think I referred to this in last week's episode. My brother drove down to Kerry in the far sort of southwest of the country and bought a mini convertible, and he's trying to decide how what the best course of action is with that now. But in any case, I had the use of it for a couple of days last week, so it was quite a fun little car to drive. Beep beep in a little mini. In any case, I was driving back up to Dublin after my swim in my own car, and I put on my CD player in the car. It was a gift from another one of my brothers who had presented us all this Christmas. This is my youngest brother, who presented us all with this extraordinary selection of books and CDs that he'd basically got at very little cost, if any, from a sort of a library clearance, a school library clearance. And he he rocked up on Christmas Day with this massive holdall full of, you know, copious CDs, DVD box sets, fat chunky Scandi noir thrillers, books, and I was like, here, take your pick, what would you like, happy Christmas. Anyway, I came away with some CDs, and one of those CDs was the best of Cat Stevens, if you can believe that. And it's been an awful long time since I listened to the best of Cat Stevens, and I'd go so far as to say it might have even been about 35 years since I listened to the best of Cat Stevens. And it was that vintage, because I remember when I was in my second year of secondary school, so second year of high school to non-Irish listeners. But there was a guy who came into my class who had been kept back a year. Now, I don't know what the circumstances of his, why he was being kept back a year, what marks he hadn't hit, achieved. But he ended up in my class, and he was a truly obnoxious character. And of course, you come back in at that age, you're coming back in. So if I was 14, he would have been a year ahead, 15, coming back. And those differences, those age differences at that time of life seemed quite significant. So he was cocky as anything. He was a smoker. He had really yellow teeth, and he's a real smart ass. To all the teachers that he felt he could mess with, he just pushed it to the absolute limit. And he was also, one of those kids who really put the front on and tried to be a sort of a hard lad, and was very quick to tell you how he'd kind of bash you, and he hung out with some of the, the tough kids, and all that's grand, you know what I mean? And you're just kind of going, oh God, this guy's just going to be such a alpha pain in the ass. But but the funny thing was, he's like, yeah, he loved Cat Stevens. So amidst all this kind of very stereotypical alpha posturing, he was like, here, let me bring you in a tape. I'll copy the best of Cat Stevens for you. Now I wasn't pals with him, but he must have known I liked music as well, and was willing to listen to stuff that wasn't like, currently on the charts. And so in fact he may have even given me a Buddy Holly. I was going to say Buddy Holiday. That would be a funny mix. A Buddy Holly compilation as well. So I think it was a double-sided tape. One side was the best of Cat Stevens and the other was the best of Buddy Holly. I mean, great stuff. But I just thought that was funny that particular guy, it was into, Cat Stevens, he's a very particular taste, isn't he? He's a very particular flavour. And there's that kind of spiritual streak running through Cat Stevens, that kind of folky 70s spirituality. But he had a great ear for melody. But there's a kind of a hippie thing in there, and of course ultimately he drifted, I shouldn't say he drifted, maybe he ascended to Islam, and doesn't he go by Yusuf Islam now? Yeah, good old Cat Stevens. Anyway, I was driving in the car and I was listening to the best of Cat Stevens, and I was going, oh yeah, cool. I remember all these songs and this is quite nice, and some I liked more than others. And towards the end of the album, if I'm not sure if it's the last song, it might be the last song on the album, along comes Morning Has Broken. Like it's a hymn, isn't it, really? Does it qualify as a hymn? We used to sing it in assembly when we were kids in school. But that song, always makes me laugh so hard. And it's not Cat Stevens's rendition of it that tickles me so. It's the fact that my older brother, right now, I don't want to get into. I'm a little bit tempted to get into some family stuff, but I haven't mapped it out what I want to say really. But my older brother. Okay, I'm going to try and put in a tiny bit of connective tissue here, right? There was a quote that I shared with some friends the other day on a little WhatsApp thread I have with some good buddies that I worked with in Melbourne. This little group of friends who I worked with in one of the schools in Melbourne. And I referred to these guys before. We used to meet as often as we could. Like as often as we could, we'd meet once weekly for basically chats, coffee chats, philosophy, psychology, politics, whatever, personal stuff, relationships, everything you can kind of throw under that umbrella. And it was a great sort of ritual, and brought us very close as friends, and that has continued, except not face to face. We try and have catch ups on Zoom when we can, because we're all a bit scattered around the place now. And lads, if you're listening, you know who you are. But I shared a quote with them the other day, and it was a Janis Joplin quote, and I think the quote is, every night, on stage, I make love to 25,000 people, but I always go home alone. And it was this kind of, bittersweet. Well, no, not sweet, really. I mean, well, it depends on your perspective. You go, yeah, cool, 25,000, that's pretty good, well done. But obviously, you come away with the sense of her loneliness. And again, that's a quote taken in total isolation, without context, and you project stuff because obviously Janis Joplin died tragically young. And one of the guys in the thread was like, I think he said, yeah, she made some bad choices. And then we were just kind of observing the sort of the cliche and the reductiveness of that. But I mentioned that because I'm referring to my older brother, who's also in many ways been a victim of his choices, and he kind of set himself off on a certain path at a young age, and has had a very again, euphemisms don't quite cut it, but eventful, an eventful life. And the eventful life has come at great personal cost at times, and there's been outward ripples of that costliness, and other people have been affected by that. And it's been challenging. It's been challenging for him, of course, and then challenging for people who kind of care about him. And that's really all I feel that is fair to say at this point. But he, who's been this kind of, cynical, out in the world, kind of cowboy, not a literal cowboy, but a sort of out there trying to, find his way and fight his corner and make money and do what he has to do, and this kind of, life is a battle. I say stuff like that as well. Life is tough, but I think I'm coming at it with quite a different sensibility and quite a different outlook. But he, as a little fella, he used to sing "Morning Has Broken." That was his little party piece in his lovely little voice as a primary school aged kid. And I remember him. Have I mentioned this before? I don't know if I have. But he used to. No, I make it sound like it was a regular occurrence. I have one clear memory of him standing in our grandmother's house at a big family gathering, and someone pressed him to sing "Morning Has Broken." And so this huge family gathering, everybody in kind of this double sort of living room, opened up by opening up a partition door between the two rooms, and my brother being asked to sing this song. And a bit like Will Ferrell in the film Step Brothers, who can only sing when he's convinced nobody is looking at him, and so sings. Does he sing with his eyes closed in that movie? Anyway, very similarly, my brother removed himself from the room and stood out in the hallway, away from everyone, to sing "Morning Has Broken," and it's just a memory of him doing that, and the kind of the sweetness of it, and the innocence, and the sort of the shyness, but also the willingness to persevere. It's actually kind of beautiful, but it's also, when you know the guy and the man he became, it is so hilarious. It's just such a bizarre juxtaposition. So anyway, when I was driving up to Dublin last week, listening to Cat Stevens and "Morning Has Broken" come along, I just can't stop myself laughing. I was just pissing myself, and thinking of my older brother as a kid standing out in the hallway of our grandmother's house singing that song. Anyway, there you go. So two other things, right? One other thing on Cat Stevens, and I'm going to circle back to the swimming. So another little Cat Stevens thing. At some point, and I think this happened did it happen when we were living in Australia? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, in relatively recent years, let's say 10 years ago, Cat Stevens was in Dublin, and he came over to do a gig, and I think it was part of, he had a musical. There was a musical based on his music, or maybe it was a new musical he'd written, and he wanted to play some songs from the musical, some of his new music. And so he was kind of tipping along, doing some songs, and eventually someone in the crowd had enough and just shouted up at him, "Here, Cat, play Moon Shadow, and it rhymes with Rolex." Okay? Play moon shadow, you rollicks. Enough is enough. That always makes me laugh as well. Poor old cat, doing his best. I want to play some of the new stuff. Not interested. Moon shadow, now. Father and son, now. Anyway, poor old cat. I mean, he's probably not poor at all, is he? Is he still with us, Cat Stevens? He hasn't died, has he? You know, you lose track. I'm pretty sure he is. I think I better just check, just so no one's triggered by me, you know, forgetting his status. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna quickly check that, because I know you're asking yourself the same question. If you're not a Cat Stevens fan, let me see. Good old cat. Yusuf Islam, commonly known as Cat Stevens, is. That's it. That's all you only need to see is. You only need to see is, and you know he's all right. Wow, he's got some interesting names for his kids. Must be from the world of Islam. Anyway, he's 74, so he's in great shape. Fair play to him. Cat, you a fan of Cat? Anyway, I'm going to circle back to the swimming briefly. So I saw something came up yesterday on my Google feed. Occasionally scroll through it, because every now and again something comes up, and you know the algorithm doesn't lie. It kind of knows what you're interested in. But Eva Wiseman, is that her name? She's a journalist with The Guardian. She put up a piece, or Google feed offered up a piece of hers from The Guardian, where basically she was proclaiming the death of wild swimming, of open water swimming. And it was quite a funny piece. And I only mention it because I've certainly been guilty of it in this space on the podcast, of occasionally banging on about my swims. I mean, I hope to God that you hear where I'm coming from, and I'm not preaching or advocating. I'm just kind of saying, listen, that's what it does for me. Because there is something that Eva Wiseman tapped into, and basically she said, you know, you'll know someone is a wild water swimmer because they'll tell you. And it's that joke about, it's very similar to the joke about how do you know if someone is a vegan, because they'll tell you. And so I've certainly, you know, away from the podcast and away from, you know, the blog where I occasionally wrote about swimming, I've tried to stay away from that kind of thing. And I mean, I made reference to this recently, the whole idea of, you know, your wellness being kind of internalized rather than screamed from the rooftops, and the kind of performative, curated wellness that we see everywhere across social media, and certainly the, you know, open water swimming, sea swimming, cold water swimming. And I suppose cold water, that is the one that people tend to go on about, just like people tend to go on about, I've been doing the Wim Hof method. Yeah. Held my breath for 5 hours. Amazing, life-changing. And it's this weird thing where you go, yeah, but Wim Hof, he's not a bad guy, is he? Wim Hof is helping people, you know, access something else and use their bodies in a richer way. Isn't that a good thing? And it is a good thing. But there's just this thing with kind of fads or things that become popular, and there's a kind of a hipsterish in the gang element to how people start crapping on about it, that it's very off-putting. I'd go so far as to say, for some people, might even be a little bit triggering. But yeah, it was funny. Her article was funny, and basically she was saying, look, great, good for everyone else. She was never interested, like a lot of people aren't interested. Like a lot of people do not want to get into water that isn't like a nice bath. I get that. I mean, I understand that, you know. And I've never tried to drag someone swimming who doesn't want to go swimming. And similarly, I've never tried to get someone to come and do karate who doesn't want to do it. Like, what's the point? Get people who want to be there. and you're just working with a much more pliable energy. But yeah, she was pointing out in her article that an awful lot of not so good stuff has gone into. Now, she was speaking about England, so she was talking about kind of Britain's waterways and the sea, and how this extraordinary amount of effluent, of human waste, had gone into the waterways that all the cold water swimmers were plunging themselves into and banging on about, and people are picking up all kinds of nasty crap from swimming in crap, basically. So yeah, she was quite happy to go, enough is enough, lads. Let's just knock this on the head. And certainly she'll be happy to stop hearing all about it from everyone who does it. So yeah, that chimed with me, and I had to kind of go, I'd have to put my hand up and go, yeah, I've done a little bit of that, certainly. Dry robes, she gave a shout out to dry robes, a little bit of character assassination with the dry robe. I'm definitely on board that train. Yeah, so anyway, just, I don't know, what is that? Why do we, when I say we, I mean you, why do you feel the need to just crap on about it? I did this, I did that. Isn't, at the end of the day, if we're talking about wellness, if we're talking about staying well, it's personal, isn't it? Isn't it personal? Isn't it a bit like your religion, your faith, whatever your belief system is, your credo, like I was talking about that last week? It's personal. Just do it for yourself, and then go out in the world and just, get along with whatever. I don't know. I mean, it also goes into that virtue signaling territory. Look at me, I'm so great doing this. Tell me I'm great. Affirm me. You're in trouble. You're in trouble when you have to do that. That is a very key area of, where do you seek your validation? I mean, I've talked about this before. You gotta work on that validation coming from within, and I think there's much greater strength in that, and it's much more nourishing to keep going with the theme that I said I'd be touching on this year. A motif of the year, just to recall last week's episode. Anyway, I'm going to park all that stuff, okay? Cat Stevens, swimming, great days, flow states. I'm going to leave all that for now and jump somewhere else. I don't know, I mean, as I talk about what I'm about to talk about, maybe something connective will present itself, but right now at the outset I can't identify anything immediately. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that have come up in Irish culture recently. Two things that have been brought. Well, one, I came across it online and I was really interested in it, and the other was something that my wife brought to my attention last night, and they are related. They are absolutely related, and I think it's a really interesting thing. Basically, we're going to get into this area of an area of what? I mean, basically what you have are two sort of examples of thoughtlessness, of cultural insensitivity, of offence causing, and I think in a very real way, in very profound ways. And so I'm going to start. The first thing was, and if you're an Irish listener and you've been paying attention to what's been covered in the media, you're probably already familiar with this story. But I came across it a couple of weeks ago, just after it happened, and basically the situation was this. So Tommy Tiernan is a beloved figure in Ireland, and I think for a lot of good reasons. I've always found him worth paying attention to. He's a stand-up comedian, if you don't know that, and he's an interesting thinker, and a very thoughtful guy with a very sort of poetic kind of leaning, or a poetic. He can often, I find, have sort of quite a poetic voice, even though his kind of bread and butter is comedy, and has been for over 20 years. Could be even closer to 30 years at this stage. And Tommy Tiernan has come to even greater sort of prominence in Irish media in recent years, because he has a talk show, very standard one-on-one format talk show. But the only thing that's different about it is he doesn't know who's going to sit in front of him in the chair until the show starts. So there's a kind of an unexpected nature to it, and an impromptu nature to it, and he has to just trust his own instincts as a person, as an interviewer, as someone who's interested in people, that he'll get a good result. And I've seen bits of the show. I've seen, I think there's usually 2 or 3 guests, and he's a very personable character. Anyway, he was doing one of his stand-up shows in Dublin earlier this month, and there was a woman in attendance in the crowd, and she is someone who's been on TV as well. I hadn't come across her before, but her name is Emer O'Neill. And so I just saw this article come up where it was like, fellow TV personality walks out of Tommy Tiernan gig. And I just saw the name, Emer O'Neill. I thought, okay, what's this about? And she relayed her experience of Tommy Tiernan telling this joke, which he prefaced by saying, "My family told me I shouldn't do this joke, but we'll see how it goes." And basically it was a joke about going to Dublin Zoo, and he was comparing animals to different things. So the penguins were like nuns. The wolves were, the wolves were being compared to Irish people in some way. And so as I was reading this, I was thinking, oh, this person who walked out of the gig, it's probably some animal activist or something, and they've been triggered by some animal cruelty joke or animal humiliation joke. And then I kind of scrolled down and I saw that this woman, Emer O'Neill, was black, and I just got this sinking feeling in my stomach, and I thought, oh no. I'm thinking, Tommy, what have you done? Anyway, he went on to make a joke about going to the savannah section of the zoo and seeing, and basically the punchline was, and seeing taxi drivers. And got a great response from the crowd, and I think the association was meant to be there are members of the sort of African community in Ireland. That's such a broad statement. Who a lot of them are taxi drivers, and I just thought, holy shit, are you serious? Like, one, I just thought it just wasn't a funny joke at all. 2, I thought the association between zoos, the savannah section, and then this sort of long-established, horrible, racist connection between African animals and, I guess, primates and black people. I just thought, this is really off. Not funny at all, and in extraordinarily poor taste. Absolutely, unequivocally, a sort of a racist joke. And apparently the almost exclusively white audience laughed, which Tommy Tiernan took as validation of the joke. He said, well, it can't be that. It can't be a racist joke if you're all laughing. But Emer O'Neill felt she just had to leave, and just felt excruciatingly kind of uncomfortable, and chose to leave shortly afterwards. Anyway, the fallout from that, I saw it, and I remember saying to my wife at the time, going, really, is this Like, what the hell? Like, how in God's name is this considered funny, palatable, acceptable? Like, it's such a weak joke anyway. And, it did, one of my first thoughts was it reminded me of the weakness of Chris Rock's joke at the Oscars last year when he made the joke about Will Smith's wife. Oh God, why have I just gone blank on her name? You know the incident, because she had alopecia, so her head was shaved, and he made a really weak joke about the sequel to G.I. Jane, and then it led to that ridiculous, that over the top. I don't know. I mean, again, that reaction. Go back and the Will Smith slap at the Oscars when Will Smith jumped up on stage and slapped Chris Rock across the face. Anyway, I mean, it's. The first kind of note of offence was, to me, for both those jokes, was they're terrible jokes. They're not funny at all. But then when you put it into a context, in Tommy Tiernan's case, a context of being overtly racist, and of course this idea then of comedians who are punching down, which isn't. I don't feel that that's Tommy Tiernan's wheelhouse. That's he's a much. I've always found him a much more intelligent comedian than that. And again, it's I don't want to get into kind of some sort of pious territory with this, but in any case, I saw nothing. I saw no real reaction to this, and didn't hear it coming up anywhere. But then the other day, I noticed that Emer O'Neill had been interviewed on Irish radio and RT on Radio 1, and you can go and find that. In fact, I might even put the clip. I might even put the link to that interview in the description of this episode. You might be interested in it to hear her account of her experience. And basically, she was saying that Tommy Tiernan had reached out to her via email to apologise and offered to speak to her on the phone, and they had a very, what Emer O'Neill described as a very productive, constructive and helpful phone conversation for about an hour. And she's just pointing out, really spelling out the kind of the impact and kind of the shame that she felt, because she has worked in sort of racism activism, trying to educate and advocate and make people more thoughtful, more considered, make people think about ethnic minorities differently, make them try to see things from the other side of the fence, so to speak. And in that moment, and she was saying in the interview, you can listen to it, she was saying she advocates people, to stand up and challenge racism. But she said she had this horrible kind of feeling of, I'm not doing what I'm saying. I feel I just have to leave here, and was afraid of kind of being heckled and being made feel more conspicuous. So she was kind of expanding on all of that, which I felt was like, yeah, this all makes absolute sense. And one of the things she said that Tommy Tiernan said to her was that it was only after the incident that it kind of gave him pause for thought, to think about, as a, in his words, as a, middle-aged white man, that he wasn't in a position to say what was or was not offensive to a person of colour or to an ethnic minority. And I'm not saying that he's being disingenuous. I was just kind of going, wow, really? Really? Has it taken this incident to kind of draw your attention to that, or to make you consider that? I don't know. I think I don't know. I mean, my context. I mean, I've spoken about this I feel like I've spoken about this quite a lot on the podcast since its inception. This area. I mean, I just feel like I've got like an interest. I've had an interest in sort of, if I suppose I say, oh yeah, I've always been interested in racism. That's not quite the right way to phrase it, But I feel like I've been very aware of the sort of the injustice of racism and the injustice of discrimination, particularly against black people, from a very young age, primarily as I've encountered it through movies and popular culture, I suppose, but primarily through movies. And it was something I felt, I don't know, I always reacted, I felt internally, I always reacted very strongly to that, and with a very sort of ignited, or like a very ignited, sparked sense of injustice and the wrongness of it, and the kind of the cruelty of it, and that's kind of it's never not been with me, and I was just thinking, when I was reflecting on it over the last few days, I was kind of thinking, well, and then today when I listened to the interview with Emer O'Neill, like, I found myself thinking, has Tommy Tiernan not lived outside Ireland? Has he not lived outside Ireland for a long enough time in certain countries to kind of go, you can be Irish and be exposed to certain attitudes, certain perceptions, certain unhelpful, reductive stereotypes that can be, if not overtly racist, can be sort of racist adjacent, if you like. And again, I've always felt very aware of that, having lived in England in my early 20s. You don't have to go very far to encounter those attitudes, and like within an English perspective, a sort of a lazy assumed superiority, exposed to the sort of the ignorance of the history between our countries, and again, I'm not trying to make a direct equivalence with racism based on colour, and certainly when Emer O'Neill was speaking about the blatantly racist commentary that she got after she shared her experience publicly and across social media, I think what she said, there were about approximately 6,000 comments, and she said about 99% of them, and I was, some part of my brain was like, 99% of them were really supportive. No, I'm unfortunately not. 99% of them were like, go back to Africa, and you're not really Irish. You're not the real Irish. You're some watered down version of that, and this was the one that was particularly horrible. There's plenty of boats and planes you can get on, and basically, feck off out of Ireland and leave Ireland to the Irish. And she was saying how, this, you can click on those comments and they'll bring you back to someone's Facebook page, and they're just, very normal looking Irish, white Irish people with their kids living their lives, and are not trying to hide or obscure their identities, are not trying to obscure that they are the originator of some really horrible racist language directed at a woman of colour. I find, generally speaking, I'm not shocked. I'm rarely shocked by the depths of crap human behaviour, because there's just so much, there's far too much evidence that people can be colossally shit, and I can't say that I can't say that I'm shocked by this story, this reaction. I mean, I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. You kind of go, oh man, really? Are we not better than this? And I do kind of go, do we not, do we forget our own history? Do we forget? And I mean, funnily enough, there was another clip I came across online recently, and it was of Richard Harris, because you may or may not be familiar with what's often presented as apocryphal accounts of signs that went up in English accommodation through the, I guess, 50s and 60s. And there used to be a sign that could be seen in the windows of bed and breakfasts or small hotels, I guess, I'm not sure, that would say, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. And as I say, that has, I think there's been an attempt at times to debunk this story and make it apocryphal and go, no, that was never there. But there was a clip I saw of Richard Harris being interviewed, and he would have been a young Limerick man in England pursuing his acting career, and he saw one of those signs in a window. Now, Richard Harris, if you've seen any of his archive interviews, he's quite the storyteller, and I think not averse to a bit of kind of theatrical or poetic license. And he was obviously a bit of a rogue and a brawler and a drinker, and is often held up as one of, an old school real man. And to this day, one of without question, one of his absolute, most gripping performances was very early in his acting career, and that was this Sporting Life, as this kind of brawling brute of a rugby player, who is kind of, I don't know, I don't know how to kind of describe the arc of that story, but that is a really, it's a kind of a punch of a movie. It just smacks you in the face, and it is about masculinity and sexism and virility and violence and repression, and I don't know if it falls into the kind of the kitchen sink dramas. I think it has more to it than that, and that's not to diminish kitchen sink dramas, but in any case, Richard Harris, I think he was very well aware of the myth of himself. Anyway, he was telling this story in this interview about how he saw one of these signs, the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish signs, and he wrapped his shirt around his hand and punched through the window and took the sign away with him as his act of defiance. It's a nice story. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Richard Harris or suggest that he didn't actually do that. But, my inclination is to think, that sign was there. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't smash the glass. But the point I'm trying to make is, as Irish people, can we not kind of, I don't know, what is this act of forgetting? What is this act of willful turning away, or not owning our past, or not recognising what was done to us and how we were marginalised and discriminated against, and what happened to us under British occupancy, and the various horrors is a very dramatic word, but the entirety of our history, from the sort of Norman invasions on, the Norman invasions, which of course they were invited in, so invasion might be a misnomer, but I don't know. I just kind of think, really, and Irish, the amount of emigration that is part of the Irish story, particularly from the famine onwards, and how many Irish have gone, how many generations of Irish have gone to other countries and had to kind of survive and make their own way and find a way to be the outsider who fits in and gets along. I don't know. I just think there's something really, I don't know. I mean, I used the word disingenuous earlier, but it's like, come on, lads. Come on. Don't forget where we came from. And let's do better. Let's do better. I just find that stuff, it's troubling, and it's troubling when I think it's very troubling when people think they can just kind of throw out that sort of hate speech so easily and not be called on it. And I think Facebook was the platform that allowed that to happen. And I'm not sure what way legislation is moving in that area, but it's concerning. And this isn't. There's nothing about this position that's woke or snowflakey or overly sensitive. Whatever about the specifics of Emer O'Neill's experience, we are talking about challenging something that's really insidious, that's really destructive, that has a profoundly negative impact on the communities of people that it touches. And I just don't value it at all, and I don't think it's something to be made light of or to trivialize. It's something that's really, really important, and it says something profound about where we're at as a culture, as a society, if we're not challenging that stuff, and not challenging it in really unambiguous ways, and looking at more constructive ways to negotiate a changing society. And like wherever a society changes from being largely one thing to becoming a new thing, there's always tension and there's always emotion. And then you throw into the mix, as we have now, a sort of a landscape that is economically viable, a rocketing cost of living, and all the angers and emotion around that, and then volatile elements outside trying to manipulate that sense of anger or frustration or helplessness, and then trying to hold up targets, which could be, again, this is nothing new under the sun, to target others that aren't us. And I go, feck that. I can't stand that idea. I despise it. And I mean, Emer O'Neill spoke really well in that interview, and is kind of standing up for herself and just going, let's have a real hard look at this. And she was very, very clear in her gratitude to Tommy Tiernan for kind of reaching out and having a proper conversation about it. And I think that always is the way to go. Like, let's keep the conversations going, look at these things intelligently with nuance, and again, I think just be very clear about shouting down the kind of toxicity of racist rhetoric. Don't give it oxygen. Don't green light it. Quite the opposite. Put up a red flag, and expose people and go, no, this isn't cool. This isn't right. This is not the country we want to be. That's my position anyway. Okay, so as I say, I'll throw a link to that interview in the description of this episode, so you can go and give it a listen yourself and see what you think. In another area, my wife was pointing out this story to me yesterday. Apparently, I think this is mad. Apparently, in Antrim, which is in Northern Ireland, again, this is for the non-Irish listeners, okay? So if you're Irish, rolling your eyes, going, we know where Antrim is, Dara. We know where Antrim is, okay? We're Irish. Even Emer O'Neill knows where Antrim is. Lads, Emer O'Neill's Irish, okay? She's one of us. Emer, you're one of us. Tommy's one of us as well, by the way. Anyway, is it a hotel up in Antrim somewhere? I mean, I didn't bother going, check the details. But basically what they're offering, one of their special services, and one of the lovely things you can do at this hotel/spa maybe, is you can come and have a spa treatment, and get into some nice comfortable swimwear, and when you're done with that, you can pick up a gun and go to their firing range and shoot your gun. And that in itself feels to me like it belongs in a different universe, in a different part of the world. Maybe some of these gun-toting states in the USA come to mind. I'll have a massage, I'll have a facial, and then I'll get out my AK-47 and let rip on the firing range. But up in Antrim, there's a hotel, a venue, offering that as, come and do this, it'll be great crack. And the way they're advertising it, and here's, this is the thing, they're advertising it as bikini and balaclava, or bikinis and balaclavas. And they have pictures of, I think they're advertising a campaign involves 2 women in skimpy bikinis with black balaclavas over their heads. Now, you might go, if you're a non-Irish listener, you might go, okay, what's the big deal? The big deal is, throughout the period of Northern Irish history known as the Troubles, where there basically was, 25 years of bloody conflict between different paramilitary groups and the British military and the Royal Ulster Constabulary, which led to huge loss of life, acts of horrendous violence between the different members of the different communities of Northern Ireland. The balaclava was a standard piece of paramilitary uniform to disguise the identity of the combatants. And you can think, and this would have happened across Antrim. It happened in the cities of Northern Ireland, particularly Derry and Belfast, and towns and different regions. And you can be sure, if you're someone who grew up in Northern Ireland at any time from 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, if you saw a man coming into a pub or coming anywhere, coming towards you wearing a balaclava, your thought probably wouldn't have been, oh, this will be fun, this will be a nice experience. Your thought might have been, something really bad is about to happen. And again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of, different allegiances, because that's kind of besides the point. But the balaclava was a symbol, basically a symbol that meant, warfare, that meant violence, that meant execution, that meant punishment, beating, that may have meant bombing. And a lot of people in Northern Ireland, which is not a huge place, let's remind ourselves, a lot of people have been touched by that violence in very traumatic ways. And so the idea that a venue in Northern Ireland is going, this will be fun, throw on a balaclava, throw on your swimwear and come and fire a gun and get a massage or a spa treatment, I find it kind of astonishing. I thought, is this a kind of a sick joke? Is this what is this? What sort of crazy money-making neck has someone got to do this? And again, it seems like the reactions have been quite varied, and some people have been highly critical of it, and some people have made jokes about it. One that did make me laugh was a responder, a commenter said, well, I find this really disturbing because, I'm too fat to wear a bikini, but at least if I put on my balaclava, no one would know it was me. Now, I thought that was actually quite a good joke, but better than Tommy Tiernan's joke. No offence, Tommy. But yeah, again, I see a connection between bikinis and balaclavas and the tolerated racism of Tommy Tiernan's joke, and then the horrible racism in the comments that have been directed at Emer O'Neill. And again, I did this phrase of, collective forgetting. I don't know, it's really weird. Like, why? I don't know. That just seems like such a poor, tasteless, provocative in the worst possible sense way to market your services. And again, let alone, I don't know what the rules are around firing ranges and gun ownership anywhere on the island of Ireland. Let's just put it that way. So I'm really not sure what the legalities of that are. And I just thought, Jesus, this is surely someone surely it's a wind up, and it's like Michael O'Leary, the CEO of, or the owner of Ryanair, who at one point said, yeah, we're going to have planes without seats, standing only on short haul flights around Europe. And again, you're just thinking, okay, it's just a publicity stunt. Let's get some attention here. So maybe that is, but certainly my wife's impression from the article she shared with me and mine from reading it was, no, this is legit. And the venue was like, no, we're still going to do it. It's really popular. But I don't know. The phrase that comes to mind to me is just, people need to cop on to themselves and just cut that sort of stuff out and go, no, this is wrong. There's no place for this. There's no place for such short memories. There's no place for such disregard of, and this is what it comes down to, isn't it? Like, my feeling is, whether it's, people of colour, people in ethnic minorities, people who have been victims of the Troubles, you don't just cast them aside. You don't just disregard their stake in society. You don't disregard their emotional rights, their emotional kind of validity. Because of course that's the ultimate kind of objectification, isn't it? You remove their humanity when they're just there as a punchline to a joke. And it's the same with this bikinis and balaclavas nonsense. Anyway, look, I'm going to leave it there because I'm on my way to the dentist to have some dental work done. So that's going to be fun, isn't it? Listen, that might feel like an abrupt ending, and I apologise, but there's a bit of meat in that episode, I think, and I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. I hope it's stimulated some thinking, and I welcome any response, negative or otherwise, on any platform. You can find me there. Just see the social media links in wherever you're listening to this podcast. The links will be there for Facebook, for Instagram, for YouTube, Twitter, and you can send me some love. You can send a response, a comment, thoughts. Please subscribe, like, share, and if you want to support this podcast, which is an independent production by little old me, down here in #blessed in County Wicklow, do please, because it just makes it all a lot easier, and it's a validation when someone goes, yeah, I'll give you a few bob once a month, the price of a cup of coffee for this work that you're doing, for this creative product that you're making, that I get something from, and I'd be delighted. I would very much welcome it. Okay, that's it. I'm gone. I'm out. I'm about to get an injection of something into some part of my mouth for work to be done. I'd rather stay here and talk longer, but dentistry, it's a necessary evil. Okay, you take care. Do mind yourselves. Do stay positive. Do stay thoughtful. Do engage, and don't tolerate the crap that shouldn't be tolerated. Maybe that's a good place to go, is it? Is it? Not with piety, just with, come on, do the right thing. For God's sake. Let's be better. I think we can do that. Okay, take it easy. Mind yourselves. I'll talk to you next week. All the best. See you. Bye.